those glycogen stores that are all beat out now. But this idea of low carb, no carb, there is such a thing as like having an appropriate amount of carbs, and it's not like you have to be a little bit in ketosis or a lot, because ketosis only happens when you are profoundly carb deficient. Your body then kicks over into this special source of metabolism purely to save your brain, because you've got to save some glucose for your brain, and so your body's like, well, I guess we'll use ketones so their brain doesn't die. Protein matters. By the way, the natural sources versus processed food, that's why that's such a huge deal, because processed food means one of four things, or sometimes all four. It's either got highly refined wheat, which hits your body basically the same as sugar, because it's ground so fine and down the fine flour, it's like the difference between sugar. And then sugar is the next, refined wheat, sugar, vegetable seed oils, which is just, that would be 3 hours in itself, but all the every soybean oil and all the corn oil, it's in everything, and so it's really hard to get away from. It's why processed food sucks so much, because it's in like any package in the store. If you turn it over, you will find some sort of vegetable seed oil in the first like four, and it's because it's ultra cheap, and it has to do with government policy stuff. It sucks. And then the other one is trans fats, which are illegal to sell now unless you buy French fries, because all the oils that get boiled at ultra high temperature, they all get turned into trans fats, and that's how you eat them. So those are the four processed foods. And that's why natural food sources, which means, does this look the way it did when it grew out of the ground, or walked the earth, or swam in the sea, or flew? If the answer to that is yes, then you're good. It's all right. Processed food is stuff that's like in the shape of Mickey Mouse's head and stuff like that. I'm going to skip over this, but it's basically losing body weight. We want to lose fat, not muscle. And there was a big study that was done, a bunch of them now, but in having high amounts of protein, you maintain more muscle. No matter what, if you're losing weight, once you get to a certain point, you're going to be losing a little bit of muscle, but hopefully you can replenish it. You can gain muscle at the same time and then net more muscle overall. But in order to have the maximum amount of fat loss, the two things that matter the most are having high protein and resistance training. And that's what that normal protein is NP there, and resistance training is RT. High protein is, HP. And so you can see that the more fat you're starting with, it's nice kind of, because your body preferentially is going to burn that fat. The leaner you get, you go to a guy that you go to Martrice's body fat, and it's hard to lose more body fat, because your body doesn't. It's like, hey, but we kind of need that. What if famine hits? And so the resistance training part and the part where you're keeping higher protein. How much protein? It's a myth that protein will damage your kidneys. There are some patients with like polycystic kidney disease where even with them, there are some nephrologists that say it doesn't really matter, but it's a split opinion. But everyone agrees, like who actually like knows about this. If you have normal kidneys, which pretty much most people do, if you have normal kidneys, you will not damage them by going high protein. Like, and we're talking like 300 grams a day. Like your kidneys, they do that without breaking a sweat. And so high protein is generally considered to be, it ends up being about a gram per pound of body weight. But it's so satiating that for a lot of people, they find that doing more than that is helpful. And there's not a lot of compelling reasons not to. It's pretty hard to start to get your nitrogen levels high enough where there's a problem. Matter of fact, having a high BUN, that blood urea nitrogen, people that are actually like doctors that know about health and fitness, they just kind of look at it as like, hey, good, you're in positive nitrogen balance. That's way to go. And timing, I'm a huge fan of fasting. Honestly, when Josh said, do you want to talk about this? I think he probably thought I was going to talk mostly about fasting, because it was what made all the difference for me. I think I probably, if I'd known then what I know now, I probably could have done it less painfully, because it was really, really hard at the beginning. If I'd have known about the nutrient composition and having natural foods, and just treating sugar and processed food like all of the vegetable seed oils, if I had treated them like cigarettes, where it's like, I've never smoked, just to be clear, but treating it to where one time I woke up and Mom had left a message on the fridge that said, yeah, this is when I was in college and an idiot, and she's like, your jeans are in the dryer, your stupid cigarettes are in the trash. And I was like, but anyway, it's, if you treat it like cigarettes, where it's like, will one cigarette kill you? Yes, but not really. One won't. 1,000 probably is starting to damage your lungs quite a bit and cause bronchitis and emphysema and maybe eventually lung cancer if you have DNA that's going to go that way with it. And that's kind of like sugar. Like it's not like sugar is not an acute poison. It is a chronic poison. It is something that over time will do this stuff. And so I can't remember why I started talking about that, but it's because. If I'd have known about, getting that stuff out of my diet, I think it would have made fasting, easier. Because that's why I have this as the second thing. Because if you can do time restricted feeding, it's generally helpful. It's not only does it restrict the window for when you're having calories, but the only way to have insulin be as low as your body can make insulin is to have zero food coming in. Because if there's any food coming in, protein and even a little bit with fat, insulin will still go up a little bit because it is a storage hormone. Nothing makes it spike like, simple sugars, but anything will increase insulin. And so if you're looking for like, how can I get the area under the curve for how much insulin I have to be as low as possible, because I want to make myself super insulin sensitive so that my metabolism is higher and so that I'm less hungry, then fasting does that. It's the lowest you can have your insulin is there's no food coming in. How long does it take for it to get to that point? Depending on your last meal, anywhere between 4 to 12 hours. But 12 would be if like your last meal was I drank avocado oil and ate a steak.
What interval did you, just out of curiosity, what was your feeding versus?
I started at 16 hours, and then it just, and what was fun, and that was super hard for the first couple of weeks, months, and then as it got easier, it just kept going up and up and up. And then I was doing to where it was really rare that I would have food more than, I would always have at least 18 hours. Usually it was 20. And then once or twice a week, I was just going, 36 or 48 hours without eating. And it wasn't even like it was like, I'm going to soup. It was like, I wasn't hungry, and I was carrying, at that point, probably 25 extra pounds of body fat, and so I was never not eating. It's just that I was eating my own fat stores because I had, my lipolysis had kicked up.
So you're fasting every day?
I was then. And then eventually, and it's part of what the RP diet people get really, really good. It's this matching of like your body's responding to the thing you're doing, so then you got to change the battle plan because. And so for me, and it was a long time, it was a year and a half. It was finally a year and a half in, I realized I had started to decrease my metabolic rate. For a while I was gaining muscle and losing fat, and then I was keeping muscle and losing fat, and then I was losing muscle and losing fat. So 2 months ago I switched over to eating specific amounts on 3 to 4 hour windows for muscle protein synthesis. And my long-term life plan though, I can't wait to go back to the fasting thing. It was just so much simpler, and I liked it. So, yeah.
How do you put calories in at that point? So if you're doing 16 off, 8 on, let's say somebody like you would have to eat more calories, mm-hmm. 3,000 calories. Do I have to cram 3,000 calories in 8 hours?
What's nice?
Or is it more intuitive eating?
It is more intuitive, yeah, and that's part of what's nice about it is like intuitive eating. There's all these YouTube videos now about like you can lose weight just with intuitive eating. Throw the scale out, and it's wonderful advice for once your hormones are telling you what to do, and it's terrible advice before that because even still for me, my intuitive eating would tell me to get like 3 milkshakes, and so. But what I found was there was a certain. It was pretty difficult for the first month or so, and then your body really does regulate what you need. I do wish I'd known early on about kind of getting a general idea of what my total daily energy expenditure was. I didn't, and so I just tried to keep my fat level crazy high. I had, I was usually in 80% range of my diet being fat and 20% of it being protein. Sometimes it was 70-30. And so it was a lot of macadamia nuts. I cooked everything in coconut oil and all of those things. And so, but sometimes my eating window, it would be like I'd have 4,000 calories during that eating window, and I really felt like I needed it, and then I would really be fine for a long time. And then other times it was just like after 1,200 calories, you're just kind of like, I'm good, and your body is, and it's great because your body's just back to like, hey, we're still burning. You're carrying so many. A lean person is carrying around 100,000 calories of energy, like somebody who's like 15% body fat, which is not tons of us. And so there was so much extra calories I had to burn all the time that, especially at the beginning, it takes, in my case, it took 1.5 years for it to start actually being like where my body was going to try to start, decreasing the metabolism. And then I'll put up this last slide because I've gone for too long. There's some practical tips, and I'm happy to hang out for as long as possible. Any other questions I can answer before? Yes, ma'am.
How does that not eating within that 18-hour work for you when you are working out though?
I and this is one of those where I got more humbled about this as time went on, because it's like anything new where you're just like, it's like when you're on day 3 of your diet and someone's eating exactly the way you ate up until 3 days ago, and you're like, look at this idiot. I can't believe this. I felt that way with fasting. I was like, how come more people don't understand, like, you have all this extra energy? And I've realized now, with working with some people on it and just with reading more about it, I think there is certainly a DNA individualized component to this. On that one I was lucky because I really found no difference in my ability to exercise while fasted. As a matter of fact, for some of the like zone 2 level cardio, which is just hard, basically breathing through your nose, but it'd be nicer if you could breathe through your mouth. I found that if I was fasted for 24 hours, I felt like I could just go forever, because I was just like, I felt like I just had this endless fuel source of just constant fat, because that's where your mitochondria are preferentially burning fat anyway. That I think is partially from doing it for a while, and partially is just luck. So there are some people that, and by the way, burning more with fasted cardio versus not, as an absolute calorie number, that's not accurate. Signaling wise, there's different sides to that debate. But for a lot of the people that do it, they will say that they'll either work out in the morning, because you do have this dawn phenomenon. Your body releases some cortisol when you first wake up, which does increase your glucose some. Even if you're fasted, if you're sleeping, your glucose might be 65 or 70, but when you wake up, it might be as high as 85 or 90 just from the cortisol release. So people will take advantage of that and work out then, and then other people would incorporate it so that at some point, an hour or two after they ate, so they're not just super full, that they would work out then. Uh-huh.
So I used to, and I stopped because I guess I read that there was it's like 90% saturated fat.
Mm-hmm.
And you feel
It is. It's the highest in saturated fat. So it's a complicated answer, but briefly, saturated fat plus sugar, super dangerous combo. Saturated fat without sugar, it's really hard to find data that shows that it increases cardiovascular risk. And so it's one of those where it's like it's best to have public policy that helps the most people overall. It's kind of like telling people, watch your salt intake. The majority of people absolutely don't need to, but there's some people where it really it makes the difference in heart health, and so everyone has to have bland food. But with saturated fat, the smartest play on a public safety thing is to say, watch your overall saturated fat. But if you look at HDL versus triglyceride numbers and things like that determine your risk of atherogenic events and just overall cardiovascular health. People that are like pure keto, where their saturated fat is through the roof, but they don't ever have any sugar, their numbers are awesome, and it's more sugar plus that, and it's just because sugar does the same thing to lipoproteins that it does everywhere else, which has these advanced glycation end products. It'll glycosylate those things, and that's what causes these free radicals, and that's what causes damage, because you have these fats, these foamy, low density foamy LDL is what damages endothelial linings to your arteries, and that's what causes these atherogenic plaques. And that foamy stuff, all of that, the damaged LDL particles, that's from sugar. That's what does that. So that's it. That's long. I didn't make that shorter, did I? Yes.
A question. So growing up, I always heard that like soy milk and soy-based protein was really bad. Now, mainly I'm lactose intolerant. Still came up with like these 20 grams per serving soy milk. Like I tried out, it tastes really good.
Yeah.
But I kind of like, now that I try to research like how, if it's still bad to have soy-based, like now they just put like, yeah, it's like a milk replacement, but I can't find anymore.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, so soybean oil sucks because it's this omega-6 stuff. But soy milk, the only thing to know about soy protein is that it's a little less bioavailable than animal sources of protein, but that's easily compensated by just having more. But it's great stuff. I'm a big cashew milk guy now. It's only 25 calories in a cup of it. What
about the estrogenic effects of soy?
I don't know. I haven't heard. It'd be good for you. Maybe I shouldn't have it.
At certain levels, there's supposedly some type of
hormone that locks like estrogen.
Yeah, that's good to know. I'll look into that. That explains a lot.
What is your recommendation? So when I work crazy shift, like a lot of hours, and you've been working like 24 hours, and you don't resting, but you keeping with energy, you come into workout, but I try to keep in my 8-hour, 9-hour without eat anything, because I know the other hour I need energy and I need eat. So that is something like healthy, or I've been doing and I feel good, but my weight always is keeping the same. Even I want to lower my weight. I guess my body is normally 136, even I don't want to be 136, be lower.
Yeah. One of the things I said at break was that I was going to ask you afterwards what you do, and then just start doing that. Just kidding.
I work like 36 hours in one hospital, 24 hours in another hospital weekly.
Mm-hmm.
So I having like crazy and on call shift either. So my minimum hour is 60 hours per week.
That's a lot. Yeah. Your NEAT is through the roof. Yeah, and your exercise. Yeah. And so I think it's probably safe to say your non-exercise and exercise thermogenesis pretty on point. And so it comes down with, to steal from Peter Attia again, I think what he says to people that have, you've got everything dialed in for one, it comes down to those three levers of which one feels like it would, make the most sense and provide you with the most energy, whether it's, I highly doubt in your case that it's reducing, the overall amount of calories, but, whether you find timing that works better for you, or whether you find the composition of the diet, that changing works better for you. But again, most of us just want to figure out what you're doing. Yeah. It is amazing what a difference that makes. That is true. And I'm a worse chef, and I cook so much more now than I used to. And it's all, I like it. No one else will eat it. But it's except for those two, the protein ice cream and anabolic French toast. Man, you can find them on YouTube, either one of those things. Protein ice cream is like, so I just had it last night. It's like 7 cups of this stuff. Is it as good as ice cream? Absolutely not. but it's 80% as good, and so it's like, it'd be like if you had a Frosty that was like someone just described what a Frosty tastes like, and then someone tried to make that just from the description. It's like a sketch of a Frosty, but it's good. Like it's definitely tasty. But the thing about it is, I had it last night. I measured it out. I made 7.5 cups of this stuff. It's an incredible amount. It had a total of 285 calories in 7. And I mean, I was full to bursting when I was done, but it had like 50 grams of protein, and so for me, it has really been helpful because I go to bed super full, and you can do it either with carbs or without carbs. It's been really helpful. Anabolic French toast, just to answer that question, is it's basically using some sugar substitutes and egg whites and making. So I have it sometimes twice a day, but almost always at least once a day, and it's 4 slices of it, and it's 490 calories with like 70 grams of protein, and it's really good.
So eat more ice cream, eat more French toast.
Exactly. If you have one take home, that's what it is. Yeah.
So with intermittent fasting, I work out at 6 a.m. So my feeding window right now is I have like an 8-hour feeding window, but I really find on the workout days that I'm ravenous. Like I hold off until noon or as close to noon as I can from eating. So I've heard like BCAAs and like some coconut oil and like coffee or whatever will kind of help not really spike your insulin, but kind of get you the calories to get you to that meal. Yeah. What's your thoughts on that?
I've heard the same thing. Yeah, and particularly one of the things I found, and I didn't find it till of course half a year or a year, and I can't remember when exactly, but once I discovered the branched chain amino acids, it made and I think again it's individualized, but it made a huge difference for me, where I would have that. Everyone always talks about sipping on it through the workout. I've never found that as helpful for me as I'll drink it, in 3 or 4 big swigs, over the last 5 minutes of the workout or when I'm done working out. That made a big difference for me, both in soreness and muscle preservation and not being as hungry afterwards. I do think that if fasting for some window is a 10 out of 10 success, if you have coconut oil or something that's pure butter or something that, basically something that is 100% fat and ideally really high saturated fat, whether if 200 calories of that or whatever, because I know everybody talks about, is it 50 calories or less, and from all the research and just from personal experience, like whether it's a 48-hour fast or a 16 or whatever, I think if that's a 10 out of 10 success doing 0, I think it's a 9.8 out of 10 adding one of those things. Like, because what it does to your insulin is so negligible that you're not really losing any of that lipolytic effect that you have. You're still you're burning through the exogenous fats that you took in, but you need it because you're starving, and you're not really kicking yourself out of that fat burning mode that you were in. So I hate saying fat burning mode. That sounds so cliche, but yeah. Good. Thank you guys for listening to all that. That was a lot more than I thought. Yeah.